90s before I ever found the Law of One, and I thought it was completely horsepucky. I just had no interest in it. Thought it was ridiculous. But I just said, oh, let me bring it along as reading material. So I had it with me. I'm in this Denny's late at night, and this guy walks past. He kind of looks like a Harley guy, like a biker. A beard, you know, and the leather jacket and everything. And he says, what do you think about that Montauk project? I said, oh, this is ridiculous. This is a joke. I'm just reading this for entertainment. He said, could I talk to you about something? Okay. So he sits down. He said, I worked at Montauk. I literally laughed in his face. I said, you have got to be kidding me. To make a long story short, he gives me this enormous download. I'm scribbling stuff on the back of the napkin and the back of the place thing that they give you at Denny's. And we made a contact, and I've had numerous opportunities to connect with him since that time. And I can't get into a lot of detail. He does not want to come forward. He is terrified of publicity. He has been willing to do some audio work so that he can get his testimony recorded on audio, but I'm going to have to garble his voice. So here's the deal. Apparently, now, first of all, let's not forget, okay, if even one UFO sighting is real, meaning not swamp gas, then we're not alone, and there are UFOs. As soon as you accept that, you have to also accept the fact that they can materialize and dematerialize. So they're winking in and out of our reality somehow. Well, how would they do that? Apparently, the answer is in the seat. Okay, you have a seat in the UFO, and it plugs into your mind, and you think, I want to go to a particular place. You visualize where that place is. This vortex opens up in front of your ship. Your ship flies through the vortex closes behind you, and you end up going where you need to go. So what happens if a disc crashes and our government guys pop the seat out of the UFO and then start tinkering with it? And then what happens if they get help from a particular group of extraterrestrials from Sirius, apparently, and the ETs are telling them, yeah, well, you know, design this coil and build this way and build a big octahedron, like 2 Egyptian pyramids top to bottom. And that's your main antenna. So, to make a long story short, it took a number of years, but there were a series of progressive steps that led to the ability to bring this chair online so that it was fully functional in its intended purpose. The chair had, this is all stuff, now Daniel got hired in at this job. He was an Air Force captain, and he was given a rote sentry position at this place, kind of like a guard, but he also had a variety of tasks that were to be performed. He did not know what was going on. But what happened in the early days was he was in the cafeteria eating his lunch or whatever, and you'd see over in the corner of the room, it would start to burble like a mirage. And then you'd see something that shouldn't be there, like you might see through the wall into the other room. Or you might see a field with green grass or something. And sometimes it would be up near the ceiling, and you know, sometimes it would be in the floor. So it turns out that everybody talked to the janitor. The janitor had somehow gained everybody's confidence. So he started having these meetings with the janitor. The janitor started to tell him what was going on. Now gradually over time, he apparently was indoctrinated and got fully knowledgeable about what was going on. This was an abandoned military base at the far out point of Long Island called Montauk. He did say that the first book in the Montauk Project series was authentic, that pretty much everything in the book is true. He then went on to say that every book since then has been increasingly distorted and not truthful. He knew Al Bielek, he knew Preston Nichols, he knew Duncan Cameron, he knew Stuart Swerdlow. All these guys were there. Duncan ran the chair the best. Duncan was the guy that could run the chair. He had some experience working with the chair. He said that They originally tried to build one reverse engineered, and then that didn't work. They eventually had to go back to the original design, use the actual real chair, not a one that they'd rebuilt. There was something about these Helmholtz coils that had to be altered. So basically what happens is you're in the chair. There's 22, I think he said 22, basic wavelengths that the chair creates that are like your mind waves, your brain waves. And from these 22 wavelengths, all other waves come from your mind. So when you sit in the chair, they would have you go into what they call the quiet point. And this is a point where your mind is perfectly still. Now normally, if you go in the chair and your mind isn't quiet, the waves are going to be, fluctuating all the time. You go quiet and the waves will sort of stop and go to like a fixed point like this. Well, out of the 22, if you have a wave that looks like this, the idea is to get it to go flat. So they would zero out the chair, as it's called, 22 knobs, 22 waves, and you flatten out all the graphs once they get flat. Duncan Cameron apparently was the only person who could get everything perfectly zeroed out, perfectly stable. There was an extremely, extremely enormous power supply that was required to run this chair. It was a non-standard frequency. It was not alternating current 120 hertz. It was some weird decimal point number of hertz that they had to run through the chair. But what would happen is that consciousness would create matter. They found that you could think about an object, like let's say you thought about a particular wooden chair and you visualized the chair would start forming in the room. First maybe very shimmery and sort of like you couldn't even see it, and it would harden up. Depending on how much thought energy you put into it, it would stay solid for a period of time, and then it would dissipate and sort of disappear back into the background. Then they started to find out that if you thought about a particular place, that there would be an opening that would appear and you would go to that place. You could send somebody through it and then they could walk around in there for a while and other people could see them. It was like they were there. And then you'd have to have the person in the chair physically pull them out with conscious intent to get them back out. Now, they did do a lot of experimentation. They sent innocent people through and they were killed. Some of these were street tramps. Some of these were homeless kids. Apparently Swerdlow was responsible for recruiting a lot of the kids. I believe it's possible people can change. Daniel doesn't. He talked about Al Bielek. He said Bielek was a big storyteller, always, had some funny thing going on. Daniel claims he himself never went through the vortex. At some point they realized that they had gone to a place that was not the present, that they had traveled through time. They got very excited about this. Now this is where it gets really strange. It just gets stranger and stranger. Supposedly we have a body that they call the transient body, and then we have a physical body. The transient body is what New Agers would call the astral body. At the point that you're first conceived is called your zero time reference, or ZTR. That moment is where you have contact with this place called zero time. Now, the physics model goes like this. If you can imagine space-time like a sheet, everything above the sheet is the world that we inhabit, the reality that we inhabit. Everything below the sheet is this three-dimensional reality that's kind of like where antimatter is. It's like the astral plane, mirror image of where we are now. As you accelerate through space, you start curving space. And eventually it curves around in on itself like a donut. And that's a torus. It's called a torus. If you keep on going, the torus unrolls. Now, because of what I've told you with this sheet thing, you got time in here, space in here. Time is three-dimensional, space is three-dimensional up here. As the sheet curls in, you get time on the inside of the donut. But then as you keep going, the donut unrolls in the other direction. And the time that was down here unrolls and becomes your space. So you're now in a three-dimensional world you can walk around in, you can inhabit, but it's out of phase with our reality, and people in this reality wouldn't see you. You disappear. So this is apparently what was done inadvertently with the Philadelphia experiment. The Philadelphia experiment started with tests that were done on very, very high intensity welding, arc welding of naval vessels. And they had these enormous pieces of steel that they're welding together. They blast it with